The Spoonful of Strength podcast is now the Spoonful Show. This podcast brings strength, humor, and heart to the chronic illness community. Inspired by the spoon theory, which shows us that even with fewer spoons, we can still live fully. This show highlights real spoony topics and practical insights to help you feel less alone and more empowered. I'm your host, Rachel, and together we'll take on this journey one spoon at a time. Welcome back to the Spoonful Show and happy Thanksgiving week to all of you. I know the season can be complicated when you're living with a chronic illness. It's a time of gratitude, but also a time when our bodies just feel like they need extra care. And sometimes during the holidays, you find yourself in situations where you have to extend yourself maybe a little bit more than you would normally do, whether that be fixing dinner or traveling to family. And so whether you're celebrating big or celebrating small or just even simply surviving the week, I'm grateful that you're here. Today's episode feels especially fitting for the season because we're talking about something that so many of us struggle with: fatigue, burnout, and the underlying root causes that drain our energy. And I'm so excited to share this conversation with Dr. Jenny Tufenkian, a naturopathic physician who spent decades helping people with complex chronic illness and who deeply understands this journey from her very own experience. This episode is packed with wisdom, validation, and hope. So settle in, give yourself permission to rest, and let's dive into this powerful conversation with Dr. Jenny Tufenkian. Dr. Jenny Tufenkian, ND, is a naturopathic physician specializing in chronic fatigue and holistic healing. Having personally navigated CFS-ME, she combines her lived experience with professional expertise to empower others with practical science-backed strategies for lasting wellness. She leads a thriving private practice in Portland, Oregon, and serves as an adjunct clinical faculty member. Dr. Jenny focuses on uncovering the root causes of chronic fatigue, addressing core energy drainers, and exploring the connection between physical health and subconscious healing. Beyond her clinical work, she's a devoted mother, outdoor enthusiast, and culinary lover, bringing a relatable and engaging perspective that resonates with patients and health professionals alike. So welcome, Dr. Jenny, to this episode. I can't tell you how excited I am to talk with you today. This is just going to be a very interesting conversation over fatigue and the root causes. And so I want to first ask that you kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the things that you practice in your work.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for doing this podcast. I know it's so important for people to be getting more information about how they can help themselves, which, we have people who are struggling with chronic illness haven't had this in past history. This is such an amazing time that we can connect in this way, and it's not so exhausting to just turn on and listen or to watch. So thank you so much for doing this. It's great. Yeah, so I'm a naturopathic physician, and I've been practicing medicine for a couple decades, and my focus is really helping people with complex chronic disease. And my reason why for doing this is it chose me. And this is something that I'm sure many of you can relate. Now that once I figured out what was going on with me, I realized I had roots probably in my childhood of having some of these things that were impacting me as a kid. But I had this severe crash my second year of medical school and had to take a year out. I was in bed with IVs in my arm. People thought I was going to die. I was incredibly sick. And I came out of that a couple years later and got 150% better. So that time allowed me to understand a couple of different things. It allowed me to come into a deeper understanding of myself. And it also allowed me to understand how much a body can heal. And so I came out as a doctor knowing that it's possible for people who really are very sick for there to be this healing potential for them, but also to understand that it's a challenging time when you're in that space. I honestly didn't think I'd get sick again. And then I did. Like 10 years later, I hit perimenopause and it triggered this crash along with this severe pain and all these other things. And again, I came out of that, but it made me realize how easy it is to relapse. And so now I realize that instead of curing my chronic fatigue myalgic encephalitis in the 90s, what I did is I put it into a really great remission and I was 100% out. It was 100% remission. But the seeds were still in me to reactivate it given the right environment. And the same thing happened again during the pandemic. I knew we were going to have a second pandemic of myalgic encephalitis. I didn't know it was going to be called long COVID. And I experienced there was enough stress in my body, and I also had a bunch of stuff going on in my gut that when I got COVID in 2022, it re-triggered it, and I also got long COVID, so I got to have that personal experience. I was studying it, I knew it was going to happen, but then I got to experience it from the inside, which you know well. It's a whole different journey. Keeps things, as you say, spicy and interesting. But that's really why I feel like I work with these people, one, because I get it. And I also really see that there's incredible potential for healing, and I won't give up on that. I know and so that's what I do.
So walk me through where you were at the lowest when as far as fatigue and things, and what made you look for something to heal that.
Yeah, my lowest was incredibly low, like it's scary low. I was trying to have a second child in medical school, and I had a miscarriage at 17 weeks and hemorrhaged in my bathroom and passed out and had to be rushed to the hospital. And they did an emergency DNC on me. And because my insurance wasn't going to cover the visit, blah, 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 they sent me home. And I came home and I came downstairs and I went and sat with my son to watch something with him. And then I just felt like, oh my God, something's wrong. And I literally crawled up the stairs, crawled into bed, and my blood pressure was down to like 90 over 40, which is really low. And from then on, I was in bed for months. And I ended up having what I called a dark night of the soul. And so I literally had to be walked to the bathroom. I didn't go downstairs for 2 months. People brought me food and I couldn't eat it. I couldn't sleep. I literally had IVs in my arm. People would come. I was very blessed because I was a naturopathic medical student. So all my teachers came and all my colleagues, fellow students came and took care of my family and fed them. I was amazingly blessed, but I was non-functional. I was staring at the ceiling through the skylight, watching the planes go by. And I was very anxious and suicidal. And neither of those were me. I hitchhiked by myself in my 20s. Like I was not an anxious person. And so I literally was having a total breakdown on the physical, mental, emotional, and energy level of my body and was out. So the thing that triggered the deepest healing in me initially, two things. One, a counselor that I did not hire, but she said, you've got to eat. And I decided to live. And so I forced myself to eat 9 almonds so I could get some food inside of me. And that was a huge turning point for me, was deciding to live. Tears are coming to my eyes. I haven't talked about this in this way for a long time. And then the second was we brought in a hypnotherapist who was brilliant, and she came and sat at my bedside twice a week, and we did hypnotherapy sessions. And it was addressing the subconscious mind for me was very powerful because I realized that I was the the spiritual energetic part of this journey for me was to clear out some past trauma, some generational trauma, some trauma from other part of my soul and this in this lifetime. There was a lot of stuff that was in there that had come up, and that was a gift. That was the gift, like the gift to clear out and work on that stuff. I wouldn't have seen it. I wouldn't have paid attention to it. And that made me a better person after that. So,
Yeah. Had you tried any conventional approaches, or because you had the background in naturopathic medicine, was that your first go-to?
I definitely, it was my first go the naturopathic, but then there were people who are like, why don't you just take this drug or this medication or whatever? And I did do this thing. I grew up not being told that it was okay to really go in my parents' bedroom at nighttime. And so I only went in, like, knocked on their door like once or twice, like once to puke, and I can't remember something else. And so for me, end up calling my dad in the middle of the night one night and said, can I try that Xanax that you have? I know that you have. And he drove over and gave it to me in the middle of the night, and it did nothing. And that was when I realized two things: the power of my mind, it's very strong, and two, that drugs weren't the way out of this for me. And so I really, I really just sunk into what I was learning in school and just went deep in that way. And that's what I did. Yeah.
Um, you've talked about before 5 core energy drainers.
Mm.
So can we get into that conversation of
Absolutely.
what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 5 root causes. So that second time I got sick, I couldn't afford to go back to bed. I had to keep working, or else I would have thrown my family into bankruptcy. So I'd literally get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was in so much pain, I couldn't sleep. And I would just research what's happening with this myalgic encephalitis. This was in like 2014, 2013, 2014, and trying to figure it out. Back then, everybody thought it was just one thing, and they were fighting about, is it from, is it parvo B virus? Is it Epstein-Barr virus? Is it this? Is it that? And I started thinking, I think it's more than just one thing. But I was going down all these little rabbit holes and experimenting on myself. And this is when I ended up coming up with these 5 root causes. This time was really interesting because I got blessed with all these people coming to my clinic who all had chronic fatigue. And so I ended up being able to experiment with them as well and see what the patterns were of different kinds of fatigue and who responded to different kinds of treatment protocols based on their root causes. So and this is what we've discovered is the 5 root causes. The first is, I call it the gateway root cause, which is the hormone triangle, and that's your adrenal gland, your thyroid, and your ovaries if you're female, male testes. That triangle is like a symphony, and it always wants to work together. And if one is out of tune, they all go out of tune, or they start pulling each other to kind of match. And the adrenal, that hypothalamic pituitary axis is the fancy name for the adrenal gland, is really the one that drives this more than anything. And so many of us are on the stress express in this culture. We are push ourselves so hard, and even as teenagers and people in their 20s and 30s with their professions, with being perfect parents, all that kind of stuff, that we tend to stress our bodies and get that hypothalamic pituitary axis gets impacted. So we're not as resilient and resistant to stress, the stress of life, as we should be. And it throws off many, many systems in the body. That's the gateway root cause. And if you think about what I was doing before before I crashed, I was in medical school. I decided to become a doctor when I was 6 months pregnant. Had a small child. I mean, it was just crazy. I was doing so much. And so I think that was part of the setup for me, for sure. So, and all of those systems, you can do different kinds of testing to look at. Just if you want to take notes on this to assess that adrenal gland, doing a 4-point salivary cortisol test is the best way to do that assessment. And even labs like Quest, you can get that done now, where your standard doctor can order that through Quest. Or you can use a functional medicine lab. Obviously, testing your thyroid, doing a really comprehensive thyroid assessment, not just TSH, but looking at free T3, free T4, TSH, also looking for autoimmune markers for hyper and hypothyroid, not just one, because sometimes people have both. So hyper and hypothyroid markers are really important for that. And then there are different ways of assessing for hormonal function. The second root cause is looking at infections. We've all heard about this microbiome, this thing that we carry around of all these different organisms where there are more cells that aren't us than are us. We also have a virome, which is a viral load. And these are viruses, some of them we don't even have names for. There's like junk DNA that are viral inside of our cells. And these can get activated or turned on when we are stressed out. So you can begin to see how these root causes interact with each other. If you're stressed out from, doing all these things, then you become an opportunistic host for the viruses to become reactivated. some classic viruses to get reactivated in all of you experiencing fatigue. This has also been well studied in multiple sclerosis as being a link to that, and some autoimmune conditions in Hashimoto's thyroiditis, things like Epstein-Barr virus. Epstein-Barr virus loves to live in different organs and tissues. It loves to have a party when you're tired and when you're stressed out. Frequently, I hear people say, I've never been well since that motor vehicle accident, that horrendous divorce, that difficult pregnancy. Like, and those are often signs of things I'm listening for that may make me think that maybe they have a reactivated virus that we need to look at. There are other viruses like cytomegalovirus, herpes 6 virus. All of these are can become reactivated. And then, of course, we have the COVID, SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is one of the viruses that has triggered this fatigue pattern in so many people all around the planet that it is a second pandemic. 30% of the people that have been exposed to COVID end up getting some version of long COVID, and a lot of people don't even know they have it. So I really feel like it's one of those very underdiagnosed and very undertreated situations. So yeah. So and you can also have an overgrowth of fungus or bacteria. Like, it doesn't have to be a virus, but chronic infections is that second root cause that's so important to address. And it gets ignored by conventional doctors because we don't have great testing for them, and they don't know how to interpret the tests that we do have. If you go to a functional medicine person or a naturopath or an integrative physician who understands how to look at these panels, then you can actually get help with diagnosing. And yes, there are treatments. Do not believe your doctor when they say there's nothing you can do about it. Even if I do test you and you do come up positive for Epstein-Barr virus, there's nothing we can do about it. And that's not true either, because I have like this crazy deep and wide arsenal that I use to treat all of this stuff. And it's really, I'm like, the thing that I'm doing when I work with people one-on-one is figuring out what works with your body. I have so many things to choose from, but it's like, what works for you? Because some people are super sensitive and need the babyest dose of the babyest thing and a little dropper of that for them, and other people need a wallop for their body to get the message that they need to shift. So the third is looking at your mitochondria, which are actually, I'll say the third is, we'll say third root cause is looking at toxin load and toxic burden and overload. And this can be microplastics, this can be mycotoxins from molds, this can be heavy metals, this can be pesticides, this can be herbicides. We've all been exposed to all of these things at this point, and I really think doing something every day where you're moving your detox centers, so you're drinking lots of water, so you're having proper urination and flushing, you're making sure you're eating plenty of fiber and, healthy foods for your gut, wherever your gut is. I realize some people react to fiber and you have to be careful what kinds, but basically I want you to have a bowel movement, bowel movements every day. Multiple ones are best that are formed and healthy. That means that your body has the ability to detoxify, and moving your lymphatic system, doing dry skin brushing really helps. So doing things for detoxification are ever so important.
Are you looking for merch that speaks to your truth and makes you laugh? SpoonFull of Strength has you covered, literally. From t-shirts and hoodies to mugs and magnets, every design is made for the chronic illness community with heart, humor, and a whole lot of strength. Funny? Check. Inspirational? You bet. Illness specific? Absolutely. And the best part? I can personalize any design or create a custom shirt for you for no extra charge. So whether you're laughing through the pain or wearing your diagnosis with pride, our designs are funny, fierce, and illness specific, because being chronically ill doesn't mean being chronically boring. So if you want a sweatshirt that gets you, head to spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com. Now that's spoonful with 2 L's. Use code podcast for 20% off your entire cart.
These toxins are, they really impact our energy production centers, which leads us to the fourth root cause, which is your mitochondria. Your mitochondria are the powerhouses inside of each cell. And those mitochondria are need to generate energy for you, and they're very powerful and yet very vulnerable, and they're vulnerable to these toxins. These toxins go into the inner membrane of the mitochondria and block that mitochondria's ability to get rid of the toxic byproducts of the cellular waste. They inside your, if you've heard of glutathione, which helps um, mop up reactive oxidation species. Blah. I've been talking for a couple hours today. I'm like, blah, my tongue tied. And the heavy metals can go inside that inner membrane and block the mitochondria's ability to produce its own glutathione that it uses to self-clean. And the mitochondria can get very sick and damaged. Viruses can go into mitochondria and steal your energy from there and shift your glycolysis process. So they could take the sugar and use it for themselves. So you can get very tired if you have extra viruses that are in your mitochondria. These mitochondria are so vulnerable, and it's very important that we become aware of when our mitochondria are tired. We can also inherit patterns through the female line where your mitochondria may not work as well. And I think there's a genetic piece to a lot of these conditions. We know that there's a genetic piece to a lot of autoimmune conditions. I actually think we'll probably find that for a subset of people with long COVID and myalgic encephalitis, there is a genetic component around this mitochondria piece. I don't think it's true for everyone, but I think there's going to be a subset of people that have more of a tendency towards mitochondrial dysfunction and maybe have more severe symptoms, mitochondrial related symptoms. Um, One of the clinical ping, ping, ping pearls that I listen for to let me to cue me in that there might be a mitochondrial issue here is a thing called post-exertional malaise. So if you do more than usual, you pay for it. So one of my patients with fibromyalgia and fatigue, if she was having a great day, and while the kids were at school, she did the dishes and the laundry, she would totally pay for it and be in bed for 14 days with pain. That's post-exertional malaise. Another one of my patients was a trainer, and I said, "How's your energy?" She says, "It's pretty good." "How's your exercise?" "It's good." "What do you do?" "Oh, I walk for 45 minutes a day." And I said, "Well, what happens if you do more than that?" She's like, "Yeah, I don't do that. No, I don't do that." If she walks for an hour and a half, she's exhausted for the next 3 days. It takes 72 hours for that mitochondria to reset the ATP inside the cells. So that's like a dead ringer, mitochondrial dysfunction for somebody who has those kind of symptoms. With long COVID, we're seeing most people with long COVID have some level of mitochondrial dysfunction to the point where we're thinking that long COVID is a mitochondrial dysfunction um, issue. And more people have delayed fatigue than I used to see. I used to see in my clinic people would get the delayed fatigue was less common. It's more common with long COVID, which means that if you walk 7 miles instead of three, you end up paying for it 3, 4, 5 days later. Like you're still fine the next day and the next day and the next day, but then you pay for it, which is even trickier, honestly, because you think, oh, I did pretty well, like I'm okay. Or you're out on vacation and you're like, oh, I went to that museum and I did that and I'm still feeling pretty good. And you do it the next day, the next day, and then you're... And so that's post-exertional malaise. So that's clearly a mitochondrial issue. That's the fourth. The fifth is looking at the limbic emotional brain. So that's the limbic, amygdala, insula. We're finding more and more of these parts of the brain in the subconscious mind that interact with each other and are connected to that long nerve in the body called the vagus nerve,
Mhm.
which is the one nerve that leaves the body and comes down and impacts every single organ. And that vagus nerve is always picking up information from the body and taking it to the brain. And this limbic center is always surveying for, am I safe or is it dangerous? Is it safe? Is it dangerous? It's safe. Those of us that have generational trauma, trauma in this life, trauma from being sick, um, we have trauma just from the inflammation that our bodies are in from having a chronic illness. All of that then will bias that brain to seeing things as not being safe. You add in some more information like some gut dysbiosis, some liver inflammation, some not enough, something else that goes in there, some kind of fear reaction from something that's happening in your life that weights that brain to then think, it's really dangerous out there. And so then it amplifies your experience of pain and fatigue so that you hide. So that because it's out of love for you, out of care and concern for you, it's trying to get you to be safe. And it's basically saying, and it's not that smart. It doesn't have the frontal lobe attached. It's not that brilliant. All it can sense is you're not safe. And it says, Jenny, I don't know what's going on. I just know it's really dangerous and I need you to hide. I need you to go in your cave and hide. And so I'm going to amplify the sensation of fatigue and pain and overwhelm. I'm going to send out these things so that you get a little depressed, so you want to socially isolate, and you're going to go hide because that's the only way I can protect you. And that's what that does. And it's really easy for people to have one, two, three, or all five of these because they interreact. And what I find is that when you start to unwind this for people, because it's such a complex package, you walk into your doctor, say, I'm exhausted, my labs are normal, and you start like, where do we start? This is a really great place to start because we can start to be thinking about what kind of tired do you have? Which root causes do I think you have? And then start running tests to say, yep, that looks likely, or no, I think we're going to start over here instead.
You can fall into more than one root cause because as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, yeah, okay, that
Yeah.
sounds familiar. That, and I know with MS, there's a potential link to the Epstein-Barr virus, which
Totally.
I had when I was 12.
Yes.
And I'm realizing that a lot of the things that you're talking about, I can definitely relate to. Is there
Yes.
one of these that tends to get more overlooked than others?
That's a good question, and I'd say I don't, I don't know that I can answer that because I think they all get overlooked because I just don't think they're understood. I think that what I see happening that's problematic in the health field world around this condition, it's two different things. In the conventional model, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't fit. I mean, and so people get ghosted. They get told there's no answers. They get told there's no cure, which is better than 20 years ago where you usually got told you're making it up or you're lying or you're just trying to get out of work. I mean, I went to the Kaiser doctor in high school, and I'm sure that this is what I had. And he literally looked at me and said, "Oh, you're just trying to skip school. Get back to school. Like you don't have mono, you don't have strep. I tested both. Go back, get back to school. You're just trying to skip." And I'm like, thanks. And so I think that the people get ghosted in the conventional system because the conventional system's built on you have symptoms, we do a test, you show up positive for the test, we give you a treatment, you tell me you're better and or the test shows that you're better, I've done my job. And there's no way of testing for this condition. There's no one test. It's through a long history that you begin to diagnose whether somebody has long COVID or myalgic encephalitis. And then there's no treatment. There's no one treatment. So a doctor within that conventional model, I mean, bless them. They came into this to help people, but the system is broken and it doesn't allow them the chance to work with people within this insurance 7-minute visit insurance model. And that's based on pharmaceutical drugs and testing. So that's a big problem. If you get a conventional doctor that's more open-minded and understands this, I'd say the one thing that gets overlooked that was totally within their training and bandwidth would be to run the chronic viral lab testing and to just learn how to interpret them. So I think that's one piece where if I could get into the like I've thought about going into the Kaiser system or an HMO and say, can I train your doctors to do this one thing? Because I know we would catch like 30% of the people who are struggling with fatigue if we could just do these tests and have you interpret them correctly and get them on some pretty simple protocols. We could really support a lot of people in a substantial part of their fatigue. So that's one that I think is would be easy to incorporate into the conventional system, even as it is now. And but then what I see on the other side, on the kind of functional medicine out there, influencer space, is that everybody focuses on the one thing, which I understand the appeal for because I'm on the opposite side of that, where I'm like, it's super complex and there's all these nuance and there's these different things. I mean, we're doing this interview here and I've just laid out the basics for you and we're 30 minutes in. So
Yes.
this does not make for good soundbite medicine is what I call it. It's like where you're trying to have that great Instagram post and talk about this condition. So a lot of people will focus on the one thing. They'll say it's all mycotoxins, it's all mold, or it's all Epstein-Barr virus, or it's all this one thing. And that's not true. It's not one thing. And then I think just for your listeners to be aware of something that I've fallen into, I call it the myth of the one thing. It's the myth that there's going to be one thing that's going to cure you from this, or that's going to get your energy back. Just because your best friend tried this amazing thing from a tropical forest and she feels much better, or this person tried this one diet and they're miracles, it doesn't mean it's great for them. And we want to celebrate that and look at those things. But that doesn't mean that that's what's going to be right for you. And my experience of walking this path and of working with, all these different people for all these years, all these decades now, it's a multitude of things that get you. It's frankly a multitude of things that get you here. It's not just one thing that got you here. It was a series of ones that added up that got you to this state. And it's a series of ones that get you out. And as you work on your health foundations, you get your sleep and circadian rhythm, you work on your digestion, your detoxification, you work on your movement and your breath, you work on all your mindset and your spirit, you work on your connection, you start addressing the root causes I just laid out. You start moving and moving and moving. And then all of a sudden I see people like, whoa, I'm in a different place that I trust, right? And I trust what's going on here. And you also have, from that journey, you have a toolkit of things that you can use to avoid the relapse. Because I knew relapse was really possible, this is pre-pandemic. My dad was dying and I was midwifing his death. It was a very beautiful process, but full on. And I mean, that whole story is another whole amazing story. I remember coming home one night and opening my supplement cupboard and going, huh, this is a beautiful experience, but it's also incredibly stressful. And I was looking at all of those antivirals that I hadn't been taking because I hadn't been needing them. And I thought, you know what? This is going to be when my dad dies, I'm going to be really freaking sad. And this is going to be a great opportunity for that Epstein-Barr virus and that cytomegalovirus to have a party. So I started taking my antivirals before my dad died. And I swear that is why I did not relapse then, because I think I would have been a very, very high risk for a relapse when my dad died if I hadn't known that that was one of my root causes and what it took for me to get out of it and what I could do. So I just went on a low dose of some of the things that I took for it, some lysine, some olive leaf, some, monolaurin, some of those kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So for listeners that feel like they're stuck, I mean, we haven't had a lot of time to go beyond that, but knowing the 5 root causes for somebody who feels stuck, what is one thing that they can do aside from obviously getting to a naturopath and figuring out the root cause for them? What's one thing that they can do maybe to help boost energy a little bit that they can do at home?
So I think that it's a hard question for me to answer because I think we get stuck in different places of our journey. But I would say the one thing about being stuck is usually if you're in this, if you've been in this, if you've been watching your podcast, you're in the journey, you know what you're dealing with. Being stuck right now, there's usually some kind of mental emotional component to that where you're just like frustrated or pissed off or overwhelmed. You've been trying so many things and it just isn't working out. You don't understand why things aren't moving. And so I think one of the things that can be important is to honor what you're feeling at that time and to get really conscious of it. And I kind of this 3-step thing that I do is one, become aware of what you're feeling, whether it's anger, whether it's fear, whether it's frustration, overwhelm, whatever it is, sad, grief, whatever it is, then, and go ahead and acknowledge that you're feeling that feeling. And then to decide, do I want to change this feeling or not? Like maybe you're grieving and there's a reason to grieve and you just need to grieve for a while. That's okay. That's healthy. It's healthy to just be that. Or maybe you just want to live in your mad and use that energy to do something. That's fine too. But if you want to choose it, then you can choose it. You can choose to change it. And the third is then choosing a tool to change that and using some kind of a mindset tool to change your mood so that you can come at this from a different perspective. And so like a quick mood changer, really quick, there's like quick ones and deep ones. And I've done trainings on this in other places if people want to check it out. But just scanning your room and seeing something that's beautiful. Like, I can see these flowers in the camera and they're beautiful. It's partly why I have flowers around all the time because they make me feel happier. And then just really focusing on that energy or doing EFT tapping for something that's deeper. I'm sure you've gone through lots of different things or just listening to music or dancing or something and shifting can be helpful. I think that the reason I'm saying this, and I'm sorry if it feels like, oh God, she's just telling me to be Pollyanna and be happy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is honor where you're at, because the most important thing you can do in your journey is to not give up hope. And it's when we're feeling overwhelmed or despairing or feel like giving up that we lose that hope. And the most important thing is to keep trying. You've got to knock on a different door. But sometimes I've been there too. Sometimes I got to break down and freaking cry and be like, and just get it out and just be like, blah. And then after that release, after that, then like stand up and be like,
Yeah.
okay, what's the next thing? Like, what am I going to do? And then I personally have had the experience where it's like, a book on my bookshelf just comes out at me, or, I'm scrolling through the 10,000 emails I get, and there's one that pops in, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't, and then all of a sudden I'm on the next trail that is helping me move up that mountain to a higher level of vitality. So that's why I would say if you're stuck, it's usually emotional. And to and the thing is to shift that so you can get to what is your next thing to do, because there's going to be something else to do there. And then of course, if you're so despairing that you're feeling suicidal, please reach out and get help. And that's one of those things that's real, that happens more than we realize. And I just want to say that's normal too, that the suicidal ideation can be part of this journey. Some of it is just due to the inflammation, pure inflammation in the brain that triggers it. And it can also be due to other stuff. So if that is you, if you're that stuck, please, please, please make a call, get help, call a friend, emergency, that kind of thing right away. So
Well, we've been able to give the listeners some great information, but I want to be able to give them a path to find out even more information and follow your work. So where can people go online and learn more about these root causes and about you?
yeah, so thank you so much. So I would go to my website, drjennytufenkian.com. That's drjenny, Jenny, Tufenkian, T as in Tom, U, F as in Frank, E, N as in Nancy, K-I-A-N as in Nancy again.com. And on the website, you can see and find out information about me. Depending on when you are listening to this, we'll be opening up a summit where we're doing deep dive, doing amazing talks with all kinds of people around pain and brain fog and fatigue. And so that would be something to check out to see, depending on when you're listening to this. And there's also an application there if you're interested in seeing if we're a good match for one-on-one work or for group work. I bring on people to work with me for a year. And so if that's something that you are looking for, that somebody to really be there with you, we can have a conversation to see if we're a good fit for each other, and you can make that application there. So that's the best place to check things out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the amazing information. And we will make sure that we link the website and all the information so that they can follow your work. So
Thank you so much. Thank you.
thank you. I can't thank Dr. Jenny enough for coming onto this podcast. I feel like that we just dipped our toes into this subject. So it will be something that I'm sure in the future we can dive more into. So to recap, she walked us through the 5 root causes: hormone imbalance, chronic infections, toxic burden, mitochondrial dysfunction, and the limbic emotional brain, and reminded us that these causes often interact and must be addressed together. So if you're feeling stuck, she encouraged honoring your emotions. Try small mood shifting tools and continue to knock on the doors until you find the right support. If you want to learn more or apply to work with Dr. Jenny, visit drjennytufenkian.com. That link will be in the description of the podcast. As Dr. Jenny mentioned, if you're in crisis or feeling suicidal, please reach out for immediate help. Call local emergency services or a crisis line right now. Thank you for spending some of your spoons with me today, and I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm Rachel, and this has been The Spoonful Show. Thank you for listening to The Spoonful Show. Follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a rating, review, and comment. Connect with me on Instagram at Spoonful of Strength and TikTok at spoonful.of.strength. Remember, that's spoonful with 2 L's. Shop customized t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, mugs, and more on our Etsy shop at spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com and use code podcast for 20% off your entire cart.